Chike, Chike, wake up! She cried. But Chike did not stir. His body was limp and frighteningly still. Emeka stumbled backward, dropping the blood-stained staff. His eyes were wide with shock at what he had done. I didn't mean to, he stammered. In that moment, Emeka looked like a terrified child. He stared at his friend on the ground and then at Nneka. What have I done? Enugu was a beautiful Igbo village, perched on top of a high hill, known for its rolling green hills and cool breezes. In this serene hilltop community, life followed the rhythms of nature and tradition. Every compound in the village was a cluster of huts made from mud and clay, with walls straightened by straw and palm fronds. The roofs neatly thatched with dried grass. These huts stood in circles or rectangles around a shared courtyard, forming a close-knit family compound where relatives lived side by side. Goats wandered freely, chickens pecked at the red earth, and the air often smelled of wood smoke from cooking fires at dusk. In one such compound, at the edge of the village, a man named Emeka lived with his wife, Nneka, and their young daughter, who was 5 years old. Emeka was a farmer who spent his days tending to his yam fields and palm trees on the hillside. Nneka, his wife, was a kind woman known for her warm smile and hard work. Every morning, Nneka would sweep the courtyard with a broom made of palm fronds, leaving neat patterns on the ground. She would walk down a narrow footpath to the stream with a clay pot balanced on her head to fetch water for the family's use. Sometimes her little daughter, Chidinma, skipped along beside her, humming songs and trying to balance a tiny gourd of water on her own head like her mother. The villagers would wave and greet them on the path. "Good morning, Nneka," neighbors called out, and Nneka always answered cheerfully. Nneka and Emeka's home was simple but full of love. Their hut had walls of reddish-brown earth and a sturdy door of wood. Inside, mats woven from rushes covered the earthen floor where they sat to share meals. In the evenings, the family gathered around a small fire outside. Emeka would tell folk tales to entertain Nneka and little Chidinma, while cricket chirped in the bushes. Sometimes, their friend Chike joined them. Chike was Emeka's childhood friend, and like an uncle to Chidinma. He lived in a nearby compound and often helped Emeka with farm work. In return, Nneka always welcomed him to share their dinner of pounded yam and vegetable soup when he visited. "If you keep spoiling Chike with my cooking, he will never leave," Nneka teased one evening, laughing as she served them food. Chike chuckled. "Your cooking is too good to resist, my sister," he replied warmly. He often called Nneka my sister as a sign of respect and affection. Emeka joined in the laughter, clapping Chike on the back. It was a peaceful, happy time. Under the soft glow of moonlight, the two men discussed the day's work and plans for the next planting season, while Nneka cradled Chidinma in her lap, humming a gentle lullaby. In those moments, Nneka felt content. She had a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and good friends. She silently thanked God for the blessings of her simple life on the hill. However, fate can be cruel even in a peaceful village. One night, everything changed for Nneka's family. It began with raised voices echoing from the yam barn behind Emeka's hut. The moon was high, and Nneka had just put Chidinma to bed. Suddenly, she heard Emeka and Chike arguing intensely. Their usually friendly tones were replaced by anger. Nneka's heart pounded as she rushed outside into the warm night air. She saw Emeka and Chike standing face to face under the moonlight. I told you to leave me alone about it. Emeka was shouting, his voice harsh. In his mind, he gripped a thick wooden staff he often carried to the farm. Chike held up his palms, trying to calm his friend. Emeka, please, Chike pleaded. I am only advising you as a brother. This path you are taking is dangerous. His voice trembled slightly, but he remained firm. Nneka approached carefully. What's going on? He asked, looking between her husband and their friend with worry. She had never seen them so upset with each other. Emeka barely glanced at her, his chest heaving with anger. Stay back, Nneka, he warned, sweat glistening on his brow. This doesn't concern you. Chike turned his head to Nneka, desperation in his eyes. Nneka, he has been doing something terrible. I confronted him, and now. Before Chike could finish, Emeka roared in rage. Perhaps it was fear of being exposed, or pride wounded by his friend's words. But Emeka lost control. In a flash, he swung the wooden staff. Emeka, no! Nneka screamed. But it was too late. The heavy stick struck Chike on the side of the head with a sickening thud. Chike crumbled to the ground beside the yamba. The night fell silent. Save for Nneka's own sharp intake of breath, she rushed to Chike's side. He lay motionless on the dusty ground, his eyes closed. A dark wound on his temple began to bleed. Nneka's hands shook as she touched his shoulder. Chike, Chike, wake up! She cried. But Chike did not stir. His body was limp and frighteningly still. Emeka stumbled backward, dropping the blood-stained staff. His eyes were wide with shock at what he had done. I didn't mean to, he stammered. In that moment, Emeka looked like a terrified child. He stared at his friend on the ground and then at Nneka. What have I done? He whispered. Little Chidinma, awakened by the shouting, had crept to the doorway of the hut. She stood there now, her small figure trembling in the shadows. Though only 5, she understood enough to know something was very wrong. She saw her beloved Uncle Chike lying on the ground and her father standing over him with a horrified look. The scene burned itself into her young memory. Nneka realized with dread that Chike was not breathing. A cold panic rose inside her. If the village found out what Emeka had done, he would be branded a murderer and likely executed or imprisoned for life by the king's authorities. Emeka was her husband, the father of her child. Despite the horror of what he had done, Nneka's love for him and her desire to keep their family from falling apart overwhelmed her. She made a split-second decision that would change all their lives forever. Go inside and stay with her daughter, she hissed urgently to Emeka. Now, Emeka, go! Emeka was frozen, but Nneka's sharp tone jolted him. He staggered into the hut where Chidinma was, ushering the confused child inside and out of sight. Nneka stayed behind with Chike's lifeless body. Tears ran down her face. As she realized her dead friend was gone, she closed his eyes gently and whispered, I'm so sorry. Her heart felt as if it would break, but she steeled herself for what she had to do next. Nneka stood up and took a deep breath, wiping her tears. She picked up the blood-stained wooden staff with trembling hands, just as she heard the sound of alarmed voices approaching. Someone must have heard the shouting and come to investigate. A few neighbors arrived first, their lantern light bouncing in the darkness. They gasped at the sight. Nneka standing over Chike's body, holding the weapon. Behind them, 2 of the king's guards who patrolled the village at night also rushed over. The guards wore simple tunics and carried spears, and their faces went stern when they saw the scene. One guard, Ike, stepped forward. What has happened here? He demanded. His eyes darted from Chike's still form to Nneka's tear-streaked face and the staff in her hand. Nneka's mouth went dry, but she forced herself to speak. In a shaky voice, she declared, I, I have killed him. A shocked murmur rippled through the small gathering of neighbors. The guard, Ike, furrowed his brow. You did this, Nneka? He asked, as if he couldn't believe it. He knew Nneka as a gentlewoman. Nneka nodded, her heart hammering in her chest. Chike and I argued, and I struck him. I did not mean to kill him. She lied, stumbling over the words. Her hands tightened around the staff, and she bowed her head, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Before she could lose her nerve, Nneka turned to the king's guard and said in a steadier voice, I will go with you. I accept whatever punishment I deserve. The guards exchanged glances. In the quiet night, Nneka's calm surrender convinced them. Ike carefully took the blood-stained staff from her hand and bound Nneka's wrist with a rope, more out of procedure than fear that she would fight. Nneka did not resist. As the guards led her away toward the king's palace, she looked back toward her hut. In the shadows by the door, she could just make out Emeka's figure holding little Chidima. Nneka's heart ached. She had saved Emeka from immediate blame, but at a tremendous cost. She only prayed that one day he would forgive her for taking matters into her own hands. Nneka was taken to the palace prison that night. The king at the time was old and stern, known for giving harsh punishment. When Nneka confessed to killing Chike, the king's court declared that her crime deserved the ultimate penalty. By the king's decree, Nneka was to be imprisoned for life in the palace prison for the murder of Chike, who had been a well-liked member of the community. The palace prison was a small dark cell within the king's compound. Its walls were made of thick clay bricks, with only a tiny barred window near the ceiling that let in a silver of light. Nneka sat on the cold floor of her cell day after day, consumed by sorrow. She grieved for Chike, the friend she lost, and worried endlessly about her daughter. Little Chidima was only 5 and had just lost her mother overnight. Nneka wondered who would care for her child. Is she safe? Does she cry for me? These thoughts tormented Nneka in the lonely darkness of her cell. At times, a kind guard named Oku would pass by and hand her a calabash of water or an extra piece of yam. He felt pity for the quiet young woman who barely caused any trouble. From him, Nneka learned a few tidbits of news from the outside world. She learned that after her arrest, the village was shocked. Many could not understand why Nneka, known to be gentle, would kill Chike, but since she had confessed, few questioned it openly. Emeka, her husband, had come to the palace gate only once in the early days of her imprisonment, Oku mentioned. However, he was not allowed to see Nneka. Prisoners were rarely permitted visitors. After that, Nneka had nothing more of Emeka directly. She imagined he was raising their daughter alone. Each day in prison felt as long as a year. Nneka marked time by scratching small lines on the wall with a pebble. She sang softly to herself, the same lullabies she used to sing to Chidima. Tears slipping down her face as she remembered holding her little girl. As the years passed, Nneka held onto hope by the tiniest thread. She prayed quietly every morning and night, asking God for strength and for her family's well-being. In her heart, she still did not reveal Emeka's secrets to anyone. She had promised to take the blame, and she kept that promise even in the face of a lifetime of imprisonment. After 5 years, the old king died and a new king rose to the throne. The new king was a young man with a reputation for fairness and mercy. Upon his ascension, he decided to review certain old cases in the kingdom. When the new king learned of Nneka's situation, a woman who had spent 5 years in prison for murder, he was curious and concerned. Something about the case struck him as unusual. Perhaps it was the fact that Nneka had been a model prisoner, quiet and well behaved, or that she was a mother separated from her child. Whatever the reason, by the king's favor, he decided to show mercy. He ordered Nneka's release from the palace prison after 5 long years. One grey morning, the cell door creaked open. The guard, Oku, stood there with a key. Nneka, he said gently, you are free to go. The new king has pardoned you. For a moment, Nneka thought she was dreaming. She blinked up at the guard from the corner of her cell. Free? She whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. Oku nodded and gave a small smile. Yes, you can go home. Tears of relief welled in Nneka's eyes as the guard untied the ropes around her wrist and helped her stand. Her legs were weak from years of little movement, but hope gave her strength. She stepped out of the cell into the daylight, shielding her eyes as she looked up at the cloudy sky. It was the first time in 5 years that she had seen the open sky above. Nneka left the palace on steady feet, heading back toward Enuguku village. She had no possessions except the threadbare clothes on her back. The journey home was long and tiring, but Nneka was driven by the thought of seeing her family again. She imagined finally holding Chidinma, who would now be 10 years old, no longer the little toddler in her memories. And she wondered how Emeka would react when he saw her. Surely he would be overjoyed that she's alive and free. She thought he must have missed her every day. It was afternoon by the time Nneka arrived at the familiar footpath leading to her compound. The village looked both familiar and different. Children she once knew had grown taller. Some new huts had been built and family have moved forward in her absence. As she walked through the village, a few neighbors noticed the thin, tired woman and squinted, trying to recognize her. Gasps of surprise followed as they realized it was Nneka. People began to murmur, and some followed at a distance, curious but unsure what to say. Nneka kept her focus on reaching her home, her heart beating fast with anticipation and nerves. Finally, she stepped through the gateway of the compound that had once been hers. The courtyard was swept clean as always, the hut standing warm and inviting in the golden afternoon light. Outside the main hut, Nneka saw a woman bending over a cooking fire, stirring a pot of soup. A little girl, no, a growing young girl, was sitting on a stool nearby, peeling cassava. Nneka's breath caught in her throat. The child was her daughter, Chidinma, now 10 years old, her hair braided neatly and her face the mirror of Nneka's own. The woman at the fire was younger than Nneka, perhaps in her mid-20s, and Nneka did not recognize her at first. Overwhelmed with emotion, Nneka stepped forward into the courtyard. Chidinma, she called softly, tears already forming in her eyes. My daughter! Chidinma looked up, startled at the stranger who spoke her name. She frowned slightly, not immediately recognizing the thick-worn woman. The young woman by the fire also turned. Her expression changed from surprise to weariness. She moved protectively closer to Chidinma. Who are you? The young woman asked sharply. She had a pretty face and wore a traditional wrapper cloth around her waist. A red bead necklace, something only a well-to-do family might afford, hung around her neck. Nneka's eyes flicked to the necklace and then back to the woman's face. Realization dawned slowly. This must be Emeka's new wife. My name is Nneka, Nneka said softly, wiping her tears. This is my home. Chidinma is my daughter. At those words, little Chidinma's eyes widened. She looked at the woman closely, seeing past the years of hardship etched in her face. Mama, she whispered uncertainly. She remembered her mother's face only faintly from when she was small, but something in her heart recognized Nneka. Nneka opened her arms, hopeful. Yes, it's me, my child. It's Mama. I have come home. Her voice trembled with love and yearning. But before Chidinma could move, the new wife put a hand on the girl's shoulder, holding her back gently. The woman's eyes were cold and guided. You need to leave, she said to Nneka in a tense voice. You shouldn't be here. Nneka's outstretched arm slowly fell. She had not expected this reaction. Please, I mean no harm, she pleaded. I'm Emeka's wife. I've come back after being away for years. The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. Emeka's wife? I am Emeka's wife now, she stated. Emeka told me his first wife passed away, or rather, here, she narrowed her eyes, that we are as good as gone. He said we are a murderer who could never return. Hearing those words was like a blow to Nneka's chest. She staggered a step. Emeka had told everyone she was a murderer. Well, that was technically true in their eyes, and that she would never return. And it really moved on so completely. He said that, she whispered. The new wife, whose name was Amara, lifted her chin. She was trying to appear confident, but inside, seeing the pain in Nneka's face, pricked at her conscience. I'm sorry for you, Amara said quietly. But Emeka is my husband now. I married him 3 years ago. He told me he had no wife. The girl is my stepdaughter and I take care of her. We have our life here. You cannot just come back and disturb it. Nneka felt tears rolling down her cheeks. She stepped forward towards Chidinma again, desperate at least to touch her daughter's hand. I have been in prison all these years for a crime, for a mistake, she said, choosing her words carefully. I never stopped thinking of my family. I only want to see my daughter, please. Chidinma was clutching her stepmother's arm, looking between Amara and Nneka with confusion and growing emotion. Papa told me you went away, she said in a small voice, addressing Nneka. He said you were gone forever. My sweet girl, I never wanted to leave you, Nneka cried softly. I was taken away, but I'm here now. Amara shook her head, her resolve hardening again. She feared what Emeka would do if he found his former wife here. No, you need to leave now, she insisted. Emeka will be home soon. He won't want to see you here, and he doesn't want you near Chidinma. Nneka's eyes widened with hurt. He said that? He doesn't want me to see my own child? Her voice quivered. Amara simply nodded. He was very clear about it. For a moment, the two women stood in tense silence, with Chidinma peering anxiously from behind Amara. Nneka realized that if Emeka had truly replaced her in his life and forbidden their daughter from even knowing her, confronting him now might turn ugly. Emeka might have told lies about her. He might try to harm her or drive her out forcefully. She had not seen him yet, but the thought of seeing the man she sacrificed everything for, only to learn he had abandoned her, made her both angry and heartbroken. Nneka swallowed hard. In a broken voice, she said, Please, I will go, but allow me to see my daughter just for a minute. Amara's face softened slightly at Nneka's plea. The sight of the devastated mother moved her, despite her loyalty to her husband. She released her gentle hold on Chidinma. The girl hesitated, then slowly stepped forward towards Nneka. Nneka knelt down, opening her arms. Chidinma moved closer, until she was within reach. Nneka gently placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders, searching the young face that was both familiar and new. You have grown so much, my child, she whispered. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I love you more than anything. Chidinma's eyes filled with tears, and something in her remembered the warmth of her mother's embrace. She fell into Nneka's arms. Nneka hugged her tightly, crying softly into her daughter's shoulder. For a few precious seconds, mother and child held each other heart to heart. Behind them, Amara watched with a pained expression. She realized that all the harsh words Emeka had said about Nneka might not capture the full truth. Clearly, this was a mother who deeply loved her child. But the sound of footsteps approaching the compound gate startled them. A man's voice hummed a tune. It was Emeka returning home. Amara tensed and quickly touched Chidinma's arm. Go inside now, she urged the little girl quietly. Nneka too heard the voice and stood up, letting Chidinma go. Fear and anger collided inside her. Part of her wanted to face Emeka immediately and demand answers. How could he betray her? But Amara swiftly stepped in front of Nneka, whispering urgently, You must leave now. If he sees you here, I don't know what will happen. Nneka looked at Amara's serious face and then at the hut where Chidinma had slept inside. The last thing she wanted was a violent scene in front of her daughter. With a heavy heart, Nneka nodded. She cast one longing glance at the hut that held her child, then turned and hurried out of the compound through a side opening in the fence just moments before Emeka walked into the courtyard. Emeka entered, carrying a bundle of firewood on his shoulder. He looked around, sensing something amiss. I thought I heard voices. Who was that? He asked, frowning. No one, just a passerby asking for directions. Amara lied smoothly, though her heart was pounding. She busied herself at the cooking fire to avoid meeting his eyes. Emeka shrugged, not thinking much of it. He set down the firewood. Chidinma emerged from inside the hut, looking shaken and quiet. Emeka smiled at his daughter, rubbing her head affectionately, unaware of what had just transpired. How is my girl? He asked cheerfully. Chidinma forced a little smile and said nothing about Nneka's visit, still confused and processing what it meant. Nneka, meanwhile, lingered out of sight down the road. Her heart shattered. She had finally come home, only to find that home had been taken away from her. Emeka had replaced her with another wife and apparently did not even want their daughter to remember her. Fresh tears flowed as she walked away from her old compound. With nowhere else to go, Nneka wandered the edge of the village, where an old abandoned hut, once belonging to a distant relative who had passed on, stood empty. She took shelter there for the night, alone with her grief. That night, in the abandoned hut, was the longest night of Nneka's life. She lay awake on the dusty floor, staring at the thatched roof above as moonlight filtered through its gaps. Her heart felt heavy with betrayal. She had sacrificed everything to protect Emeka, and in return, he had discarded her, even poisoning her daughter's mind against her. As the roosters crowed at the first light of dawn, she needed to find a way to reclaim her honor and her daughter. But how? Who would listen to her now? A woman branded as a murderer and cast away? Then Nneka remembered the flicker of compassion she had seen in Amara's eyes. The younger woman had ultimately allowed her to embrace Chidinma and had shown concern about Emeka's reaction. Perhaps Amara had been told lies by Emeka. If Nneka could only make Amara understand the truth of what happened 5 years ago, maybe she would help. Early the next morning, Nneka waited until she saw Emeka leave the compound with a machete in hand to head to the farm. After he was out of sight, Nneka approached her old home once more. She found Amara in the courtyard alone, grinding peppers on a stone for the day's meal. Chidinma was inside the hut. When Amara saw Nneka appear, she stood quickly, eyes wide. You shouldn't come here, she said in a hushed voice, glancing nervously toward the gate. Please, just give me a few moments, Nneka begged, clasping her hands. I need to tell you the truth about what happened, about why I went to prison. Amara bit her lip. Part of her did not want to become involved in whatever mess this was, but another part was deeply curious and sympathetic after witnessing mother and child reunite briefly. She nodded slowly. All right, speak quickly. Nneka stepped closer, lowering her voice. She took a deep breath and told Amara everything. How Emeka and Chike argued that fateful night. How Emeka struck Chike in a rage and killed him. And how she took the blame to save her husband's life. As Nneka spoke, tears fell from her eyes, but her voice remained steady. I loved my husband and I could not bear to see him taken away, she explained. Chidinma was just a little girl. I did not want her to lose her father. So I confessed to a crime I did not commit. I thought Emeka would try to help free me, or at least wait for me. But he never came. He never came for me. Instead, he married you and told everyone I was gone forever. Amara listened with shock, slowly dawning on her face. She covered her mouth with one hand, shaking her head in disbelief. It was a fantastical story, a wife taking the blame for her husband's crime. Yet, as Amara looked into Nneka's sorrowful, earnest eyes, she knew in her heart that it was true. The pieces began to click into place. Emeka's reluctance to ever speak of his first wife in detail, his insistence that Nneka never return, the strange fact that gentle Nneka had killed someone. Now, it all made horrible sense. When Nneka finished her story, she knelt at Amara's feet, bowing her head. I don't ask you for anything except justice, Nneka said quietly. What your husband, what our husband did was wrong. I have suffered 5 years for him, and now he keeps my daughter from me. It isn't right. Amara felt a surge of anger, not at Nneka, but at Emeka. He had lied to her, bringing her into his life without telling her this terrible truth. He let another person suffer for his sin while he walked free. Amara's hands trembled, thinking of how easily she could have never known. She imagined if it had been her, locked away unjustly. Her father had raised her to value honesty and justice, and this situation was deeply unjust. You are telling the truth. I can feel it, Amara said softly, helping Nneka rise from her knees. I am so sorry for what you have endured. There were tears in Amara's own eyes now, and Nneka could see that the other woman's cold demeanor had melted. I had no idea. Emeka told me you were dangerous and guilty, or that you died far away. I believed him. I'm sorry. Nneka managed a small grateful smile through her tears. It means so much just to be believed, she whispered. Thank you. Amara squared her shoulders. We cannot let this injustice continue. My father must hear of this. Nneka looked at her. She knew Amara's father was a chief, but she had never met him. Amara quickly explained, my father is Chief Okafor, one of the respected chiefs of this kingdom. He sits on the king's council. If I tell him what happened, he will know what to do. He will insist that the king hears of this matter. My father is a fair man. He won't stand for an innocent woman's suffering. Nneka nodded, hope flickering in her chest like a small flame. All right, she agreed, but we must be careful. Emeka must not know until it's time. Yes, Amara agreed firmly. She glanced toward the hut where Chidinma was peeking out through a crack in the door. Curious, Amara beckoned her out. Chidinma, come, she said gently. The girl stepped out, looking at the two women with big eyes. Your mother has told me everything, Amara said softly to Chidinma. Your father was not truthful about what happened. Your mama is innocent. She suffered for someone else's crime. Chidinma looked up at Nneka with a trembling lip. I remember, she said quietly. I remember that night. I saw Papa hit Uncle Chike. I remember. Her voice wavered. It was clear the memory had haunted her in some way, even if she hadn't fully understood it as a child. Nneka hugged her daughter tightly, tears spilling anew. It's all right, my child. You're so brave to keep that secret inside. Chidinma began to sob softly, releasing years of confusion and fear as she clung to her mother. Amara gently placed a hand on both mother and daughter's shoulders. We'll fix this, she promised. Let's go see my father now, before Emeka comes back. Amara quickly packed up her basket, and together, the three of them, Nneka, Chidinma, and Amara, slipped out of the compound and headed through the village to Chief Okafor's homestead. Chief Okafor's compound was one of the largest in the village, marked by a tall wooden gate carved with ornate patterns. As the trio entered, they found the chief sitting under the shade of a fruit tree in his courtyard, reading a leather-bound document with the air of small spectacles. He was a dignified old man with graying hair, dressed in a traditional wrapper and wearing a red cap that symbolized his title as a chief. Father, Amara called as they approached, her voice respectful but urgent. Chief Okafor looked up, surprised to see his daughter, accompanied by another woman and a child. At this early hour, he rose to his feet. Amara, my dear, what brings you here so early? And who is this? He paused, recognizing Chidinma as his granddaughter by marriage. And then looking at Nneka. After a moment, his eyes widened slightly. He remembered Nneka's face from years ago. Nneka? He said in astonishment. Emeka's first wife? Nneka bowed her head respectfully. Good morning, Chief, she said softly. She felt nervous standing before such a respected man, unsure how he would react. Amara stepped forward and gently took her father's arm. Father, please, we need to talk to you. It's about Nneka and Emeka. There is something you must hear. Sensing the gravity in his daughter's voice, Chief Okafor led them to a secluded corner of the courtyard where a wooden bench sat. Sit and tell me everything, he said. Over the next several minutes, Amara and Nneka took turns explaining the entire situation. Nneka recounted the true events of the night Chike was killed and how she took the blame. She explained how she languished in prison for 5 years. Amara added how Emeka had lied by omission, allowing everyone to believe Nneka was guilty or gone, and how he married without revealing the truth. Chidinma, standing by Nneka's side, confirmed in a small voice that she remembered seeing her father strike Chike when she was little. Chief Okafor listened intently, his expression growing more troubled with each passing moment. By the end of the tale, his hands were clenched and a deep frown etched his forehead. He was a man who valued honor, and what he had just had revealed a great dishonor and injustice. When Nneka and Amara finished, the chief held a long breath. He looked at Nneka with compassion and regret. My daughter, he said gently, using a term of respect, what has happened to you is truly unjust. You sacrificed yourself to save your husband and he betrayed that sacrifice. No one should endure what you did. Nneka felt a swell of relief that Chief Okafor believed her. Tears of gratitude filled her eyes. Thank you, Chief, she murmured. Chief Okafor strengthened, his jaw set with resolve. This matter must be brought before the king at once. The truths must be known so that justice can be done. Amara nodded. That's why we are here, Father. We knew you could bring this case to the king properly. The chief placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. You did the right thing by coming to me. He then turned to one of his servants and instructed, go to the palace and inform the king that I request an urgent audience regarding a matter of justice. We will follow shortly. The servant bowed and hurried off. Chief Okafor then addressed Nneka and the others. We must present this carefully. Emeka should not be alerted, or he might try to flee or interfere. The king's guards will summon him when we are ready. Nneka felt a nervous flutter in her stomach at the thought of facing Emeka in front of the king. But she knew it had to be done. She squeezed Chidinma's hand reassuringly. I will be brave, she thought to herself, for my daughter and for the truth. Soon after, Chief Okafor and the group headed to the palace. It was decided that Chidinma's testimony might be necessary. So she stayed by her mother's side, holding tightly to Nneka's hand. Amara walked on Nneka's other side, a supportive presence. The king's palace was not far, an expensive compound in the center of the kingdom. They arrived to find the king already seated in his open-air throne room. A few guards and 2 other chiefs were present as well. Word had spread that something important was afoot. The young king, dressed in flowing robes with a beaded crown, watched with keen eyes as Chief Okafor led Nneka, Amara, and Chidinma into the space. After formal greetings were exchanged, the king got to the point. Chief Okafor, I received your message. What urgent matter of justice do you bring before me today? Chief Okafor bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, I come to you with a grave matter. It concerns a wrong that has gone unchecked for years. With your permission, I will let those involved speak for themselves. He nodded toward Nneka. Nneka's heart pounded in her chest. She stepped forward, kneeling and bowing her head to the king. Your Majesty, she began quietly. My name is Nneka. 5 years ago, I was imprisoned for murder of a man named Chike. I confessed to the crime. The king nodded, recognizing the case. Yes, I recall. I ordered your release recently, did I not? Yes, Your Majesty, Nneka replied. You showed me mercy, for which I am grateful. Her voice then grew stronger. I am here to tell you the whole truth. I did not kill Chike. I confessed falsely to protect the real culprit. A ripple of surprise went through the small audience of chiefs and guards. The king's eyebrows rose. And who is the real culprit? He asked. Nneka took a deep breath. This was it. It was my husband, Emeka, she declared. Chike was his friend. They fought, and Emeka struck him and killed him. I took the blame so that my husband would not be punished because we had a young child. I could not bear for our daughter to lose her father. As soon as Nneka spoke those words, accusing Emeka, the king raised his hand and motioned to one of his guards. Send for Emeka at once, he ordered. The guard bowed and swiftly exited to carry out the command. They did not have to wait long. Emeka was found on his farm and was bewildered when the king's guards approached and told him he was summoned to the palace. Heart pounding, he followed them, unsure of what awaited. Now, Emeka entered the throne room, escorted by two guards. He looked around in confusion at the assembly. The king on his throne, Chief Okafor and other council members present, and then he saw her, Nneka, standing beside Amara and Chidinma. Emeka's face went pale. He had not known Nneka was free, let alone standing in the king's presence. What is this? Emeka sputtered, instinctively stepping back, but the guards behind him blocked his retreat. He looked at Amara in panic. Amara, what's going on? Amara said nothing. Her eyes cooled as she regarded him. The king's firm voice rang out. Emeka of Enugu, you have been called here so that a matter of truth and justice can be resolved. Step forward. Emeka did as commanded, coming to stand in the center of the space. He tried to compose himself, but his heart pounded wildly. Your Majesty, he said with a nervous bow, I don't understand why I have been summoned. The king's gaze was sharp. Emeka, this woman here, Nneka, has spoken something serious against you. She claims that 5 years ago you killed your friend Chike and that she took the blame and punishment in your stead. Emeka's eyes widened in faint shock. What? My wife, Nneka, she was the one who killed Chike. He pointed at Nneka, falling back on the lie he had lived with. She confessed to it. I had nothing to do with that tragedy, Your Majesty. In fact, Nneka is dangerous. I feared for my life when she returned from the prison, which is why I didn't want her near our family. Nneka's hands balled into fists at her sides, angered by his blatant lies. But she held her tongue, trusting that the truth would soon prevail. Chief Okafor stepped forward sternly. Emeka, do not lie to our king. Remember that the gods and ancestors watch. The truth will come out. Emeka shot Chief Okafor a desperate look, realizing that Amara's father likely already knew the truth. But he dug in. With all due respect, Chief, I am not lying. This woman, he pointed at Nneka, has turned everyone against me with her false story. Because she is bitter I moved on. She probably tricked my wife and daughter with this tale. At that, little Chidinma, who had been quiet by Nneka's side, stepped forward. She looked at her father with sad eyes. Papa, she said in a trembling voice, Mama is not lying. Emeka blinked in surprise at his daughter's boldness. Chidinma, you are just a child. You don't understand. I do understand. Chidinma cried out, surprising everyone with the strength in her voice. The king watched intently as the 10-year-old continued. I remember that night, Papa. I was only 5, but I remember you and Uncle Chike fighting. I saw you hit him with the stick. Her small voice shook, and tears formed in her eyes. I remember Mama yelling and then Uncle Chike on the ground. Mama told me to be quiet and took the blame so you wouldn't be taken away. Emeka's face went ashen. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The entire court was silent, hanging on Chidinma's words. Chidinma sniffled and wiped her eyes. You promised me, Papa, she continued. You said you'd help Mama. You said it was only for a little while and you would get her out, but you never even tried. Her voice cracked with hurt. Instead, you married Aunt Tamara and forgot about Mama. Hearing his own daughter's heartbroken testimony, Emeka was struck with shame and fear. He stammered, tears now gathering in his own eyes as the reality closed in on him. The king rose from his throne, anger evident on his face. So, Emeka, what do you say to this? Your daughter, an innocent child, just spoke the truth that has been hidden. Do you still deny that you killed Chike? Emeka fell to his knee, trembling. He realized there was no escape now. Everyone was staring at him with disgust or shock. His lies had crumbled. My king, please, he pleaded, voice shaking. It is true. I killed Chike. He began to sob. It was an accident, I swear. He confronted me. We argued. I didn't mean to kill him. I was just so angry in that moment. Emeka looked towards Nneka, who watched him with tears in her eyes. Tears, not of pity, but long suppressed pain. Nneka, my wife, I'm sorry, he cried. But Nneka only shook her head. It was far too late to apologize. The king raised a hand for silence. Emeka's wails subsided into quiet sobs. The king spoke in a clear, strong voice that filled the courtyard. The truth, like a pregnancy, cannot be hidden forever. Justice may sleep, but it awakens eventually. Emeka, you allowed an innocent woman, your own wife, to suffer for a harsh punishment for a crime you committed. You deceived this court and your community. You even deceived your second wife and tried to bury the truth from your own daughter. This is a grave offense, not only against your family, but against the laws of this kingdom and the gods who uphold truth. Emeka bowed his face to the ground, weeping. Forgive me. Forgive me. The king's face was stern. Guards, he commanded. Arrest him. Two guards stepped forward immediately. They pulled the sobbing Emeka up from the floor and bound his hands. Emeka did not resist. His strength seemed to have left him entirely. As he was led away, he passed by Nneka and his daughter. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. What could he possibly say now? Nneka met his gaze one last time, her eyes, filled with sorrow and dignity, told him everything. He had broken the bond of trust beyond repair. Emeka lowered his head and allowed the guards to escort him out to the palace holding cells, where he would await further punishment, likely a lifetime in prison for his crime and deceit. When he was gone, the king turned a kinder gaze to Nneka, Amara, and Chidinma. Nneka was quietly crying tears of relief, one arm around her daughter. Amara stood close by, offering support. Justice has been served today, the king declared. Nneka, you are hereby cleared of all guilt. The kingdom now knows you are innocent of Chike's death. You have my word that your honor will be restored. Nneka stepped forward and bowed deeply to the king, gratitude shining on her face. Thank you, your majesty, she said, voice full of emotion. Thank you for hearing my story and giving me justice. The king nodded. He then addressed the assembly. Let it be known across Enugu that Nneka is innocent and is under the king's protection. She will be compensated for the wrongs she endured. One of the council chiefs announced, this will be done, your majesty, will spread the word. Chief Okafor stepped forward and smiled at Nneka. You are a brave woman, he said warmly. Your patience and courage have won in the end. Nneka smiled back at him. I could not have done it without you and without Amara, she replied. She turned to Amara, the younger woman, who had been her unexpected ally. Amara stepped up and, to everyone's surprise, she embraced Nneka in a warm hug. I am sorry for how I treated you at first, Amara said softly. I was misled by lies. I hope you can forgive me. Nneka hugged her back tightly. There's nothing to forgive. You helped bring the truth to light. I will always be grateful to you. Amara stepped back and wiped a tear from her eyes, smiling. Though her marriage had effectively ended in disgrace that day, she felt a sense of righteousness in having done the right thing. She knew her father and her community would stand by her. Finally, Chidinma threw herself into Nneka's arms once more, crying. Mama, she cried happily. You are really coming home with me this time? Yes, my dear daughter, Nneka whispered, kissing the top of Chidinma's hand. I'm coming home and I will never leave you again. The king, observing the touching reunion, smiled and spoke gently. Go in peace, Nneka, raise your daughter, and live without fear. You both have the protection of the throne. Nneka thanked him again, and with that, the assembly was dismissed. The morning that had begun with so much uncertainty ended with truth and justice prevailing. By the time Nneka, Chidinma, and Amara left the palace, the sun was high and shining bright over the hilltop kingdom of Enugu. It felt as if the whole village was awakened to a new day, in more ways than one. Word spread quickly of what had happened at the palace, how the truth had finally come out. Villagers who had once looked at Nneka with suspicion or avoided speaking of her altogether now understood her innocence and her immense sacrifice. Many were awestruck by the tale, shaking their heads that such injustice had gone on silently for years. Nneka returned to her rightful home that day. Emeka's belongings were removed from the hut, and Chief Okafor promised to help arrange whatever was needed for Nneka to start her life anew. In the compound, Nneka and Chidinma walked together through the courtyard. Nneka paused by the old yam bar, the site of that tragic night, and silently said a prayer for Chike's soul. Perhaps now his spirit too could be at peace, knowing the truth was known and the real culprit punished. Amara stayed with her father for a time, but she visited Nneka and Chidinma often in the following weeks. The two women, once strangers, wary of each other, had become like sisters, bonded through extraordinary acts of trust and justice. Amara continued to care for Chidinma as a loving stepmother, but now with Nneka home, the girl had both mothers in her life as friends. Together, they all worked to heal from the past. When villagers came by to greet Nneka and congratulate her on her freedom, Amara stood proudly by her side, supporting her. One evening, Nneka sat outside her hut, watching the sun set over the lush hills. The sky was painted with hues of orange and purple. Chidinma played nearby, laughing with a couple of neighborhood children. Her laughter bright and carefree now that her mother was home. Amara was grinding millet for dinner, insisting on helping even though Nneka had told her she was a guest. They shared a light-hearted joke and Nneka felt a warmth in her heart. Chief Okafor visited them that evening, bringing a gift of some yams and goat meat for the household. He sat with Nneka and Amara under the twilight sky. How are you faring, Nneka? He asked kindly. I'm doing well, Chief, she replied, smiling. Each day feels like a blessing. I wake up and see my daughter's face. I greet my neighbors without shame. For so long, I dreamed of this. The chief nodded, pleased. You deserve every happiness after what you endured. He looked at both women and added, you both do. Amara, you showed great courage, standing against wrong, even though it was your husband's wrongdoing. I am proud of you. Amara smiled at her father. Thank you, Papa, she said softly. As the stars began to appear one by one in the sky, Nneka felt a sense of peace settle over her. The gentle night breeze carried the scent of night blooming flowers. She thought about the path her life had taken, from a peaceful wife and mother to prisoner in darkness, to a free woman standing tall once again. There were scars that remained, the loss of 5 years, the betrayal by someone she had loved. But there was also so much to be grateful for. She had her daughter, she had new friends and allies, and she had her good name back. In the village of Enugu, people now spoke of Nneka with respect as a woman of great courage and patience. That night, Nneka told Chidinma a story under the moonlight with Amara listening nearby. It was the story of a mother who loved her family so much she was willing to walk through fire for them, and how in the end, that love and sacrifice were rewarded with justice and the truth shining bright. Chidinma snuggled in her mother's lap, listening with eyes wide, realizing it was in many ways the story of their own life. When the story ended, Nneka kissed her daughter's forehead and tucked her into bed. As Nneka stepped outside again, Amara joined her. They looked up at the sparkling sky. It's a new dawn for us, sister, Amara said softly, calling Nneka sister, now with genuine affection. Yes, it is, Nneka agreed, reaching out to hold Amara's hand. They stood together, two strong women who had reclaimed their future from the shadows of the past. In the quiet of the night, the two women smiled grateful that in their beautiful hilltop village, justice and truth had finally prevailed, and a new chapter of peace had begun for their family in the Enugu kingdom. The story teaches that love without truth becomes dangerous and lives always collapse in the light. Neka's sacrifice shows deep loyalty, but it also warns that protecting evil only harms the innocent and empowers the wicked. Real courage is telling the truth like the daughter did and standing with the truth like Amara and her father did. Leaders must listen, seek facts, and defend the weak. In the end, justice restores dignity, but trust, once broken, is hard to mend. Choose honesty early, honor your vows, and remember a family and a community stand strongest when truth, fairness, and compassion guide every action. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Nneka and her family on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with our journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V and do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss any story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.